Hey there, Commander fans. I'm here to share with you one of my oldest and most unique decks. And this is a mono-green tribal commander deck. But it's not what you might expect from mono-green tribal. This isn't an elves deck or a tree folks deck or a snakes deck. This is a mono-green spirits tribal deck with Iname Life Aspect as the commander. Okay, well first, what does Iname Life Aspect do? She's pretty obscure. Well, she's a 6-mana 4/4, and when she dies, you can exile her, and if you do, you can take any number of spirits from your graveyard to your hand. So the point of the deck is that we're a dedicated spirits deck, and Iname is a huge card advantage engine, because you fill your graveyard with spirits, and then you let Iname die, and then you get all those spirits back into your hand, giving you a huge source of card advantage. And you have lots of spirits that have abilities when you play more spirits or when they enter the battlefield, so that recurring them with Iname and playing them again gives you value. So, that's the point of the deck. A quick rules note, Iname does have to go to the graveyard for her ability to trigger, but fortunately, as part of the resolution, she exiles herself. And at that point, you can put her back in the command zone. So, it might scare you that she has to go to the graveyard, but since she can go back to the command zone on the exile, she works just as you'd like. Okay, enough about Iname, let's talk about the cards in the deck. This might be the most important card in the deck, Primordial Sage. It says, whenever you play a creature spell, draw a card. With Iname, you'll be getting your spirits back again and again. That's the point. You let them die, you bring them back, you recast them, and so on. With Primordial Sage, this allows you to take the spirits you're recasting and get an additional boost of card advantage from them. It's really powerful as you play all your spirits to be able to draw lots of cards, draw more spirits, draw into powerful things. Primordial Sage is great. It is also relevantly a spirit. Soul of the Harvest is similar to Primordial Sage, also gets you a card every time you play a creature. It's not a spirit, so it's not as strong in the deck, but the effect is powerful enough that we run both. Myojin of Life's Web is one of the more powerful spirits in the deck. It does cost 9, which is a lot, but what it allows you to do is essentially free drop all the spirits from your hand at once. So what'll end up happening is all your spirits will die because of a wrath effect, or you'll sacrifice them, and then you'll get them all back with Iname at once, and then all you have to do is replay Myojin, and then bam, you can get all of them back onto the battlefield at once. You have an instant board position. Myojin's a really important card for the deck. Now, some other ways to get card advantage with your spirits. Elder Pine of Jukai is a great one. Essentially, it says whenever you play a spirit, you get a land into your hand from the top 3 cards of your deck, which is very powerful. This will help you hit all your lands early, make sure you get your land drop every turn. Yeah, which is a really powerful effect. It also has Soul Shift 2, which is an old mechanic about getting spirits back from your graveyard. You can go look it up on Gatherer. It's pretty obscure if you don't remember what it does. Loam Dweller, every time you play a spirit, you get to put a land from your hand into play tapped. Between Elder Pine of Jukai and Primordial Sage, you'll be drawing lots of cards as you're playing your spirits, and Loam Dweller will give you a lot of mana acceleration as you play lots of spirits, which is perfect. Patron of the Orochi, with this mana acceleration, Patron of the Orochi will double your mana because it can untap all your forests to use again. It's a very strong spirit for that reason. Kodama of the South Tree turns all your spirits into a mini overrun effect, so once you have a bunch of spirits on the board, you can play Kodama, play a couple more spirits, and quickly overwhelm your opponent. This is a great way to win the game. Bounteous Kirin, whenever you play a spirit, you get to gain some life. Honestly, the life gain's pretty minimal, but it's nice against aggressive decks. Bounteous Kirin's also great because we run Birthing Pod, which we'll see later, and sacrificing Iname to Birthing Pod, we want a spirit in the deck that costs 7, and that's one of the reasons we use Bounteous Kirin, because it's a 7-mana spirit. Life Spinner is a pretty unique card that this deck gets to use, so it can sacrifice 3 spirits and get a legendary spirit from your deck and put it into play. This can get you Patron of the Orochi to double your mana, Kodama of the South Tree to help you win, Myojin if you're having trouble getting your engine going, or if Iname gets tucked, this can find Iname. Also, sacrificing the spirits is exactly what you want to be doing anyway, because you want to be sacrificing them to get them back with Iname and replay them for value, so Life Spinner is perfect for the deck. So, we're replaying our spirits for value, so spirits that come into play and do things like draw you cards are great, because you can play them a couple times and net a lot of cards off them. So Carven Caryatid draws you a card, which is great. Eidolon of Blossoms also draws a card when it comes in, so that's great. There are some other enchantments in the deck that will sometimes trigger its Constellation ability for extra card advantage, but usually it's just a cantripping spirit, which is perfect for the deck. Haru Ona, again, a cantripping spirit, so it's great. Sometimes you can play other spirits to bounce Haru Ona and replay it. It's a lot of hoops to go through to get card advantage, but if you're struggling to get going in the early game, it can be a great way to get going. Chameleon Colossus is a great spirit. It's a mana sink, so if you end up with a lot of mana that you can't use, you can make Chameleon Colossus huge. Sometimes you can even swing and take out one opponent randomly with Chameleon Colossus. Very powerful. Verdant Eidolon. Verdant Eidolon sacrifices itself to its own ability, so it's very easy to get into the graveyard to get back with Iname. It also gives you a nice burst of mana if you're trying to have an explosive turn. It's a little sad to be in a monocolored deck because its second ability will never trigger, but I like it in this deck. Okay, now we're going to get into some of the weaker spirits in the deck. I should mention that the whole point of this deck is to be able to play and recur spirits, and this deck gains a lot of value by doing stuff like that with some of the cards we've just talked about, but because of that we need a lot of spirits, and especially we need a lot of low-cost spirits. So having spirits that cost 3 or less is very important for the deck. So even though some of these cards I'm about to show you don't seem like EDH All-Stars, the fact that they're green spirits that cost 3 or less makes them excellent in the deck. So that's some of these next couple cards. Orchard Spirit, it has some pseudo-evasion, which is nice. If there are a lot of Planeswalkers in your meta, especially with those new Planeswalker Commander decks that just came out, Orchard Spirit is really good at ticking down Planeswalkers. Phantom Nantuko can grow bigger if you play it early. It can also be, it can survive combat nicely, so if you're worried about that, Phantom Nantuko is great. Petalmane Baku, you'll be playing a lot of spirits, so it'll get a lot of key counters, so you can use its ability to give you a burst of mana. Strangleroot Geist, haste can actually be really helpful. If you have something like a Coat of Arms, which we'll talk about later, Strangleroot Geist might randomly be a 20/20, and being able to have haste might help you randomly knock someone out. Undying is great too. There are a lot of sacrifice effects for value in this deck, and seeing that it undies means you can sacrifice it twice for double the value. Sheenan of Life's Roar makes alpha striking much easier because everything has to block it. So when you're trying to attack for the win, say you have Kodama of the South Tree or Coat of Arms in play, and you're trying to just win the game, Sheenan makes this much easier. Also, if Sheenan's not in play, you can channel it to give lure to something else. Dripping Tongue Zubera, another 2-mana spirit. When it dies, which it will in this deck, it leaves behind a 1/1 spirit, which can actually be surprisingly helpful sometimes. Sometimes it'll even leave behind 2 1/1 spirits if another Zubera died that turn. Now, how could it be that another Zubera died? Well, the deck runs 2 Changelings, which are not only spirits, but they're also Zuberas. So, Woodland Changeling is one example. We already saw Chameleon Colossus. But it's a cheap spirit for the deck. No special abilities, but it's still strong enough because it's a 2-mana spirit. Spectral Bears, another 2-mana spirit. I know it doesn't say spirit here in the type line, but you can go check Gatherer. Spectral Bears is a spirit. Now our 1-mana spirits, which are perfect because you can play them easily multiple times. Child of Thorns, I bet you never thought you'd see this card in an EDH deck, but it's just what the deck wants. A cheap spirit that sacrifices itself. It goes to the graveyard all by itself, so you can replay it as many times as you can. Traproot Kami it's a 1-mana spirit, and it'll be a 0-10 or a 0-15 with all the forests you'll find, so it will keep you safe if you're worried about dying. Plus it has reach. Starved Rusalka is exactly what this deck wants. It's a cheap spirit, and it can sacrifice your board. So if you are starting to run out of steam and you have a bunch of spirits on the battlefield, you can sack them all to Starved Rusalka, gain a couple life, sack Iname, get back all your spirits into your hand, and replay them and to keep your engine going. Very strong card. Okay, so that covers our spirits. Now what else are we doing? Well, we have all these creatures and we're a green deck, so we probably want to attack with them and win the game. Cards like Door of Destinies help us do that. We'll be playing a lot of spirits, so Door of Destinies will get a lot of charge counters. That'll make these little spirits that we just went through that seemed kind of unimpressive huge, and we'll be able to attack and win the game. Similarly, Coat of Arms will have a lot of spirits. This will make them huge. We'll be able to attack and win the game. Akroma's Memorial, once you have all your spirits in play, this will give them all sorts of superpowers to help you attack. Most relevantly, it gives you haste. With Iname, you'll often get all your spirits back into your hand and suddenly drop them all on the board at once, being able to attack that same turn with and win the game. Akroma's Memorial lets you do that, and that's sometimes important, especially if there are a lot of Wrath effects. This deck does survive Wrath effects very well because it can bounce back from them very easily, but it's nice to be able to not have to worry about what your opponents will do on their turn. Similarly, Concordant Crossroads gives you haste. Not as good as the Memorial because it doesn't give you all those other things, but it is cheaper. So this is great for the haste. Now, if we're going to be playing our spirits again and again, because remember, Iname brings them back to our hand, that's going to take a lot of mana. But fortunately, we're a green EDH deck, so we have lots of ways to generate mana. So I'm going to go through some of those. Again, without the mana, we won't be able to play our spirits so many times, so it's very important for this deck. Mana Reflection will double your mana. So will Caged Sun, Gauntlet of Power, and Vernal Bloom. Boundless Realms will double your lands, which is probably the strongest mana doubler in the deck, since it can't be destroyed by a Frozen Grip or a Chaos Warp. Some smaller ramp effects: Skyshard Claim, Ranger's Path, Explosive Vegetation, and Nissa's Expedition all give you a smaller burst of mana earlier, which is helpful. Urza's Incubator is a great engine for the deck. You obviously name spirits, and this will make your spirits much cheaper to cast. If you're casting multiple spirits on the same turn, which you often will be if you just got them back with Iname, Urza's Incubator turns that into something you can do very easily. Similarly, Emerald Medallion, a bit smaller impact, but also makes your spells cheaper. Very nice for the deck. Perilous Forays might be the most powerful card in this deck. It costs 5, which is a lot, but it allows you to sacrifice your creatures, which is exactly what you want to do, and it helps you ramp. So how this card usually plays out is you play out all your spirits from your hand, and then you sack them all to the Forays, including Iname. That gets you a bunch of basic land, all the spirits go back into your hand, and now you have all this new land, so you can just recast them. Perilous Forays is perfect. Also, Greater Good is very good. It allows you to sacrifice your creatures to draw a bunch of cards, especially if you have Coat of Arms or Door of Destinies. This will give you a huge boost in card advantage. Also, the discarding cards is usually, you can make that beneficial with Iname, because if you fill your graveyard with spirits, well, Iname will get them back into your hand anyway. Some other card draw spells, which is always important in EDH. Collective Unconscious, we have all those spirits that maybe aren't so great, so let's draw some cards off them. That's perfect. Similarly, Regal Force will draw you a bunch of cards. Fecundity, whenever your creatures die, you get to draw cards, which is great because the whole point of the deck is to recycle your creatures, so this gives you card advantage. It is a symmetrical effect, so maybe be cautious in playing it if you think your opponent will benefit from it too, but this deck gets a lot of benefit from Fecundity. Skull Clamp is admittedly a new addition in the deck, but it's very powerful here as it is in almost every deck it's in. Honestly, not many of the spirits have toughness 1, so Skull Clamp is not as powerful in this deck as it can be, but still the ability to clamp things before you sacrifice them for value is great. Harmonize, a nice little burst of card advantage. Creeping Renaissance usually will just get all the spirits back from your graveyard, which Iname can do, but having a second way to do it if Iname gets tucked or if she's too expensive to cast has been really nice for the deck. Also, you can name artifacts sometimes to get back Coat of Arms or a Chroma's Memorial or Urza's Incubator if some of those cards are in the graveyard. Speaking of powerful artifacts, Birthing Pod is a great enabler for the deck. It sacks your creatures, which is what you want to do. You want to fill your graveyard for Iname. And it also gets whatever spirit you need out of the deck and puts it into play. Birthing Pod is perfect. Some other tutor effects. Honestly, usually I first tutor for Primordial Sage because it enables the deck so well. But these can get whatever you need in the instant. So Green Sun Zenith, Chord of Calling, Summoner's Pact. Tooth and Nail is very powerful, obviously. And then Pattern of Rebirth, which is maybe a little more unique in this deck. But you put it on a creature. When that creature dies, you get to take any creature from your deck and put it into play. This is great on like a Child of Thorns when you can turn that into a Patron of the Orochi and suddenly have doubled mana. One of my favorite plays in the deck. Now, to round off the deck, some removal spells. Every EDH deck needs some removal spells to deal with whatever your opponent is trying to do. Beast Within may be the best card in green EDH decks because it can deal with anything. Song of the Dryads, also a new addition, but it can deal with anything, which is great. Frozen Grip to deal with troublesome artifacts and enchantments. Freylease, I think is great. Another new addition. At worst, she's a 5-mana Naturalize effect, which is not awful. At best, she can help you ramp, and sometimes she even gets you this awesome card drawing ability, which is perfect for the deck. And then we have our 2 Wrath effects. We're in mono green, so we don't get many Wrath effects, but this deck loves Wrath effects since it can recover from them so nicely with Iname. So we run Oblivion Stone and Navariel's Disc, which are great. They'll mess up whatever your opponent is trying to do, and then using Iname, we can recover really nicely. So, those are the last 2 spells. And then we get to the lands. I do have these snow-covered forests. I used to have more stuff that interacted with the fact that they were snow-covered. A lot of that got taken out, but I still like the look of the snow-covered forests, so I keep them in here. There are 32 snow-covered forests. Then we have Expedition Map, which is a way for us to go get our non-basic lands, including a Gaia's Cradle. Honestly, I have this card back from when I was a kid opening packs. If you're on a budget, you really don't need a Gaia's Cradle for this deck, but if you have one, it's a really strong enabler for the deck because it's very creature heavy. Reliquary Tower, even though we're mono green, we will be drawing a lot of cards off of things like Primordial Sage, so it's great to have no maximum hand size. High Market is a nice sacrifice enabler. It sacks Iname and will get all your spirits back. Myriad Landscape gives you some early game ramp. Mouth of Ronom, I guess, does use the snow thing. Since we're green, we don't have much removal, so this is a nice way to deal with troublesome creatures. And then Tranquil Thicket cycles for when you don't need a land. So, with that said, this is my mono green Spirits EDH deck. Honestly, I've been playing Commander for 4 or 5 years now, and I have never seen anyone else use this Commander. But I love Iname. It's a deceptively powerful deck. If you love Tribal, if you love Green, if you love Kamigawa, if you love having a Commander that no one's ever heard of, I really suggest you check out Iname. If not, well, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it.